to do this with Arcobaleno, they asked us to maybe do something that might be a little bit more out of the normal for pasta. So I think the cool thing about Arcobaleno, what they've done, is they sort of changed the game for restaurants, what we're able to do with pasta. They've really made the pasta extruder very small and compact and user-friendly for more of a retail style restaurant. So we have two restaurants. We have Fork and we have High Street on Market. High Street just opened recently, last couple of months. Fork, we have I would say, relatively traditional pasta program, mostly fresh pasta. My philosophy with pasta, coming from my background, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be traditional. It doesn't mean it has to have been made in a town in Italy, then brought here and presented in the exact same way. As long as the heart of the message is being delivered with pasta, meaning that it's not fussy, it's not too contrived, and when you eat it, that you feel like you're eating full pasta. So when you follow those things, tend to make pastas pretty tasty. At High Street on Market, it's a little smaller place. We're a couple steps left of sort of your traditional restaurant. We don't do traditional pastas at all over there. What we're going to see today is one made with say seaweed bucatini, so we incorporate kombu into it. I'll sort of talk a little bit about what makes that unique and why that's unique. When you start to incorporate other ingredients that aren't flour, water, egg, etc. into pasta, those sort of change the properties of the dough itself. So you have to be a little bit cognizant of that when you're making the recipes. We did a lot of testing with this one in particular. I think this one's unique, that's why I wanted to present it, because there's some challenges when you start incorporating these ingredients in. So for example, when you're incorporating a seaweed in, which we take, call it kombu flour. Basically it's toasted kombu that's ground into a fine powder. It's sifted. The key also is sifting this stuff. You guys can smell it, taste it, whatever you want to do. The key is to really make sure there's no lumps or anything in there that might get stuck in the extruder die. So in this case, we take that. Now, a challenge that we developed, that came about with this idea, was that there's one key ingredient in seaweed that doesn't make for a nice, luscious pasta. It's agar. Agar is a derivative. You'll see it now in a lot of cooking. It's a great item for making, if you're doing a little more modern techniques like fluid gels, but it's also great for small amounts of, really great for clarification. You can do cold clarifications with it. It's like a fruit juice, something like that. Anyways, it makes things brittle though. It breaks. It's not flexible. So when we started making this pasta idea, we realized that the pasta would just sort of break apart in your mouth, and that's not what we want. That's not a good pasta. So we had to figure out other ways to balance that. And by doing the research on it, we probably made this about 40, 50 times before we got to where we want it. Is that the addition of locust bean gum, which you may or may not know, but essentially that can attach itself to agar and not allow it to be as brittle, and sort of give you that mouthfeel that we're going for. So that's sort of the unique sort of side of this pasta, and you guys will taste it in a minute and you'll kind of see that. The dish itself is pretty simple. This one is sort of based, this is the pasta itself after it comes out. I'm going to go ahead and drop this now. The dish itself is relatively simple in flavors, and it's sort of modeled after a traditional pasta you would get in Italy, which is the pasta mugine, which is like a simple sort of coastal pasta that you might find in a small coastal town that has basically just a couple ingredients, which are garlic, white wine, the pasta itself, botarga, which is dried fish eggs, if you don't know, roe sacks of this particular fish that we're talking about, and then some breadcrumbs. It's really sort of a as good as it gets. It's Italian simplicity at its best. So what we did, we took this idea of the seaweed pasta. We knew we wanted to incorporate in some other flavors into it. So we went with the idea of botarga, which is this here. Okay? I'll let you guys taste it in a minute on your pasta. But this is, the cool thing about this is lobster botarga. If you know lobster, they don't have roe stacks, so what we do, we combine lobster roe, which is liquid, essentially, in its raw form. We put it into a roulade, we poach it, and then we dry it. And we can shave it like a botarga. So this one just cooks in a few minutes. Doesn't take long. We want that texture to stay a little bit al dente. Again, like I said, the challenge with this pasta is keeping that texture where we want it, and that's the key is to not cooking it too long as well. You see how it has that really kind of cool like striation, very natural looking. The food that we try to keep it in a very organic look to it. People would consider this more of a modern take to pasta, which I can't really argue with that. But our goal is not to present a modern dish. The goal is when we present it that it's a dish that has some familiar flavors and textures to it. The pan is just those ingredients that we talked about at the beginning, the white wine, garlic, and olive oil. When you're, the final part of the pasta, meaning the part in the pan, what people consider, it's really important that during that time, that last minute or two, that the pasta itself has enough liquid to cook in, and you also want to allow some of the flour that's on the outside of the pasta to essentially create that glaze that we're looking for. So you have to have a balance of water and fat in there as well, so that the starch can be absorbed into it. Work it a little bit, allow the starches to bind. Obviously this is a larger batch than I normally do, but start to see that glaze starting to get on there. It's not a broken sauce, it has a slight emulsification to it. That's because of the flour, the water, and the oil itself. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and plate it real quick, and then you want to give me a hand? Also guys, in here I didn't mention there's a little bit of pickled spicy chili, okay? You guys go. Any questions on this, guys?
Well, what is like the process like to figure out what else to add to get rid of that garlic brittle texture?
Trial and error. I mean, it's there's a lot of derivatives out there now that you can look into that create different properties. So it's sort of knowing historically what you do to balance agar out in other situations. We applied that to this, which sort of gave us the texture that we're looking for.
So like research-wise, kind of like books or internet things that you can put in.
I'll say this about these ideas of using these sort of modern techniques, or while they're fun and they're exciting, we don't really use them as a like I will never tell somebody, oh, we put kelso gel and locust bean dough in our pasta. Like, I'm going to say it to you guys, we're here for an educational purpose. But the customer, from my perspective, doesn't really ever need to really, nor do they want to know sort of what goes on behind the scenes. I mean, we're not doing anything obviously irresponsible here. We're just trying to create food work. But these are just techniques that are at our disposal now that we can utilize. You just have to really be responsible. I think some people, they're so quick to get on the sort of the modernist bandwagon that they forget that much of what we do is based in really elemental techniques.